Hello and welcome to Journeys of Maxa podcast. Today I'm here with Marina V, singer-songwriter. I'm super excited. We've been working very hard to get this podcast together because she's so incredibly busy doing so many amazing things. I'm going to anchor you all a little bit in her bio. This is such a fascinating story, and she's done so much, but so I'm just going to give a little teeny peek here at the very beginning, and then we're going to work through her journey and kind of explore with her. So, Marina is an award-winning singer, pianist, and songwriter. Born in Moscow, she came to the U.S. at 15, and since has performed over 1,500 concerts worldwide, self-releasing several critically acclaimed albums. A prolific songwriter and longtime Grammy member, Marina has written multiple songs for films, TV shows such as the Spider-Man series, ads such as Pepsi, as well as hundreds of songs for Kote Kitty, a popular YouTube channel for kids, which I watched some of, by the way, and I got to see the tow truck song, very beautifully done. She's won numerous awards, including an International Songwriting Award from Sir Bob Geldof in London. A self-described musical love child of the Beatles, Tori Amos, and Tchaikovsky, Marina grew up in Russia during the Soviet Union collapse, singing and writing songs since a very young age. Known for her deeply personal yet universal songs, Marina connects with and inspires her listeners through her vulnerability. At live shows and on her Twitch streams, she takes her audience on an emotional journey through music and storytelling. From tales of growing up behind the Iron Curtain and coming to America as a teen on an impressive scholarship, to making her way in the music business in Los Angeles, Marina openly shares herself with her listeners. You can find Marina's latest albums on all streaming platforms, and for other albums and rarities, look at www.marinav.com. Marina lives in Southern California with her husband and co-writer Nick Baker, and they have a 5-year-old daughter. Welcome to Journeys, Marina. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I know you're super busy, and we're very, very grateful, and you're so generous with your time and energy, in addition to all the things you're doing. One thing I have to give a shout out to my brother, better known as Ick the Troll King. He's the one who kind of brought us together, and he also introduced me to your music. I heard you several times, several of your Twitch shows, and I believe he's done some album design work for you. Is that
yes.
right?
The reason I'm wearing this shirt because it's a cover for our song Symphony Metal, and I had to wear this in honor of Brian.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you to Brian for making the introduction and making this all happen. Also, Max is starting its Maxa Rocks program, so this is also kind of great timing for us to inspire our students hearing your story. So, with all that, let's go back some. We're going to go back way back in the day. I think you started coming up with your own songs at age 4. Is that right?
That's what my family tells me, and that's how I remember it as well. But I've always had music in my head, writing itself. So it's for as long as I can remember, really.
So kind of like your daily life, probably like you said, from your very earliest time, you had this kind of in your head, this musical. Almost like a musical accompaniment to your life. Is that how you might describe it?
Perhaps, yeah. It's always some melodies that I'm creating. They were just in my head. I just didn't realize I was creating them until a little later. But the first ever song I wrote, I was about 4 or 5. With my grandmother, we sat down and played the piano and wrote a silly little song.
How fun! What an amazing story. So you had a piano then, I guess, at your home. And what was it? Was there something in particular that, I guess, was it the singing that drew you first in, or was it the piano, or what would you remember? Like what, or was it both that kind of got you on your start?
Well, singing always felt right and felt good. And my mom and everybody in my family tells me that I was singing way before I was full on speaking. And so apparently I was just born that way, and a piano made me feel excited touching it, hearing it, and then accompanying myself later. It just felt right. Well, plus there were no other instruments, so that's all.
Well, that's a good point. So maybe if there was like a tuba in your house, you might have played tuba. Who knows, right?
Maybe, but I wouldn't be able to sing. So
that's a good point.
having to,
That's a good point. Yeah, playing the tuba and singing is kind of, you don't see a lot of singer-songwriters doing tuba, but it could happen. Who knows?
It could.
So then, if I recall correctly, your mom because your grandmother was working with you initially. Then she put you into a formal school, right? Formal training that you attended like every single day after your regular school for like 8 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, I grew up in a society that were not that many singer-songwriters or
Mhm.
really aspiring musicians. If people did music, it was mostly classical. And
Mhm.
a lot of Russians do study classical music to this day. It's kind of part of the culture. A lot of people have pianos in their houses,
Right.
apartments. And my mom thought, okay, this girl can sing. She's clearly interested in the piano. And in my actual school, in the basement of my normal school, they had music school. And
Oh,
after this
cool. Wow.
normal school
Okay.
hours, the music school
Mhm.
would take over the whole school as well.
Mhm.
So I would go to normal school during the day, come home for quick lunch, and come back to the school of music to the same building
Wow. How long did that? I mean, how long were you there? Like for the
for
school?
8 years. For eight
Well,
years,
well,
yeah,
I meant like in a particular day. Like, were you there for like 2 or 3 hours, or like how
yeah,
long?
about 2 or 3 hours. Because on different days we did different things. Like we had one day we had the choir, another day we'd have music theory,
Okay.
or like my piano lessons.
Mhm.
So it just depends. But yeah, pretty much every day, and
Mhm.
sometimes on Saturdays even.
Wow. So very intense. And
It
very,
was
yeah,
intense, yes.
yeah.
And few times I wanted to quit because I was a normal kid who,
Hmm.
didn't want to sit at home and practice and be in the school of music when all my friends were out and about playing.
Right. So then, oh, right, because then you'd have to practice too. So you're there for, you go to school, regular school, you go back to this school, then you have to practice as well. That's quite a time commitment.
And do homework, of course,
Oh
for
my
normal
God.
school.
Yeah, wow. That's quite astounding. And I'm gathering from this that you were probably sort of conflicted a little bit, right? Like there were parts of you that wanted to go out and hang with your friends that were not in the school. Would that be I guess correct to say that you were sort of conflicted?
For sure. And at one
Yeah.
point, I just told my mom, like, that's it. It was
Hmm.
like a couple of years before um, I was supposed to, graduate 2 years away from graduation from the
Hmm.
school. I think I was 14 when I graduated from school of music. And I told my mom, that's it. I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is just, I'm, yeah, I'm done. And she said, okay, okay, be done.
Uh,
But if you were to stay with it, then like imagine how good it would feel to accomplish this. Because do you want to
mm,
just quit having gone for so many years and have nothing to show for it?
mhm.
But you can quit. So my
Right.
mom
Right.
totally,
Right.
my mom is a psychologist.
Well, I was about to say, yeah, she's a
Yep.
psychologist. Yeah, I
So
was going to say that's a very
she was
clever thing, just the way
very,
she
yeah.
set that up. Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm out of there. Said, okay,
Right.
okay, I'm gonna
Right.
be out of there.
Yeah, that's a note to parental note right there because if she had said you have to go, you probably would have dug in your heels. Because of
Of
course it's
course.
natural at that age, like you were like 12, I guess, to kind of like to be developing your independence, right?
Yeah,
And
rebelling, of course. Yeah,
exactly,
absolutely.
totally, totally, totally. Yeah, I mean it's sort of a natural thing, and she was very wise to say, sure, go ahead, then she convinced you. Now you write a little bit of. It's hard. I mean, in your bio, and I know this story is much deeper than this, but that there was maybe some discouragement around your creative side, your songwriting side, and do you think that contributed to this conflict a little bit?
Probably I never really honestly thought about it. The thing is, I was writing songs since I started really writing songs, sitting on the piano like 8, 9, 10, 11. Really, at that
Okay.
age, I wrote a
Yeah.
lot of songs. Just would sit at the piano and I write and play just on my own. And my grandmother would record me. So I have
Ah.
little tapes,
Oh, those are
tape
treasures.
recordings of
Yes.
those things. But
Hmm.
anyway, but I never told anybody outside of my family. None of my friends knew that I wrote songs. I never told a soul. And
Wow.
in my family, they weren't even like my grandmother was like the only one who was like, yay, and she was recording me. Nobody else seemed to honestly like
Hmm.
care.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I didn't have any like self-confidence to even like, hey, like tell people that I wrote songs. So
Mhm.
I didn't. And then
Mhm.
at one point, my mom thought, okay, my mom did encourage me a little bit later on, and she said, you know what, your songs are like really good. Let's ask like your piano teacher, what
Mhm.
does she think? So I played a couple of songs for her, and she didn't say a word to me. She like took my mom
Mhm.
aside, and later she said, like my mom said, she said, she doesn't know how to make sense of these songs.
Ah.
And then my mom told me the truth.
Mhm.
And she said, I don't know. That's what she said. And
Mhm.
yeah, and it felt, felt did not feel good.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because
Yeah.
not that I expected, like I don't know, but I expected at least something. And now listening back to those songs, like really really good songwriting for
Mhm.
that age,
Right,
really good
right,
stuff. So
right.
but now looking back, I mean, this lady was from classical school of music in the Soviet Union, where really creativity was kind of squashed on
Mm.
purpose.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't really blame her. Funny enough, years later, she came to my
Mhm.
concert in Moscow and
Mhm.
told me how proud she was on me and how much she
Wow.
loved what I was doing, which
Okay.
was just mind blown.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Do you think that that maybe she was, yeah, in a way, I think may have hit the nail on the head when she said she didn't know how to make sense of the songs in a way. Maybe it took the passage of time for her to understand that side of music, perhaps. I don't know, because obviously when you came to Moscow, it was a different, system too, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
situation had
yeah.
changed. Creativity was more embraced. But still, I'm sure that I have a sense that probably that pain from that kind of well, not exactly a rejection, because you didn't, like you said, you didn't know what to expect, right? You didn't really necessarily expect that she was going to say, "Oh, you're the next," whatever. You know what I mean? You might not have expected that, but there was still some hurt there, and I'm imagining that hurt is probably when we have those hurts as children, they last a long time.
Of course, I
So,
don't think they ever fully go away. It's
yeah,
impossible. But now
yeah.
I'm at least able to, like, put it aside, kind of rationalize it. And really,
Mhm.
I am not angry at her. It's just
Mhm.
fascinating time I grew up in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, amazing. And so then so part of you was, but you obviously practiced and you did all the classical things and whatnot. Did that help you some in terms of your facility or your ability to just kind of imagine what you wanted to do with the instrument, and then execute it?
Yes and no. I mean, because classical music is at least the way it was taught and
Mhm.
in the Soviet Union or Russia, um, extremely rigid. So everything had to be exactly the way it is on the
Mhm. Mhm.
on the sheet of music.
Gotcha.
So that felt always, I don't know. That's what I think I was rebelling against, because I
Right.
was always like, I had my own thing and I wanted to do it. But of course, learning the piano and all the classical pieces made
Mhm.
me, very proficient. So that
Right.
helped. And it
Right.
did feel good, to learn
Mhm.
a piece and then
Mhm.
play it.
Right. It's what I was thinking as you were saying that was that, if we think of someone like Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff or any, I mean, even Beethoven or Chopin or whatever, when they were writing, they were not being constrained. They were not. Someone was not saying. I mean, they may have had a composition teacher. I mean, they did often, but they weren't being constrained in that way. You know what I mean? Where in other words, it wasn't like the piece was a museum. It wasn't museum pieces in a sense, and that kind of almost dogmatic kind of uh, way of handling music kind of came in afterwards. You know what I mean? Like after they were classicized in a sense.
I
That's
mean,
true. That's
they
absolutely
almost,
true. So they kind of did what felt right and what,
right.
what, yeah.
They were part, like in a way, you were part of that stream, that creative stream. I mean, when some of these people were writing, like even Beethoven, the piano was changing. Even when Liszt was writing, the piano itself was developing, with them, right? So it was very, very radical, right, and very emotional, right, and very creative and on the edge. Yet that kind of got squished out. And the thing that's interesting too, I mean, we have classics now in the rock and roll and popular music side, right? With their classics, there are people now performing, works of the Beatles and Elvis Presley,
Yeah.
these things, right? That in some ways, if you think about it, are there people saying, well, no, you have to sing, you have to sing When I'm 64 like this because that's what was done in the
Yeah.
score. You know what I mean? So there's why I'm saying this to you is that it's, I think there's a tendency for that in many arts, where they were born from pure creativity and a creativity that goes against the grain, that also was speaking to the zeitgeist of the time, right? To like, again, looking at Beethoven and, all these folks, who were really following, doing something that was quite shocking, actually. And then later it becomes this opposite, where a talent like yours that's kind of coming from that same spirit gets like structured.
Yeah, it becomes a template. Yeah, you're supposed to follow the exact template of how it's supposed to be done. Yeah, that's it's funny. I never really thought about it that particular way. So,
well, it's just as I hadn't really thought of it either. It was just as I was talking to you, I just think that because one of the things that's been fascinating to me, having grown up loving the Beatles and those things, and I know I keep mentioning the Beatles because I know they're special to you, and we'll share why in a moment possibly, but. And I was thinking, because I was also in love with classical music. I fell in love with classical music late, and then I thought, I wonder what's going to happen if with these Beatles songs, for example. That's such a good example. Later, once they become classicized in a sense, and there's something beautiful about. I mean, if I go to a Beatles tribute concert, I kind of want to hear the songs to sound like the Beatles,
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean? But the nice thing is that currently you can still write your own songs and also play songs that sound like the Beatles if you want to. You know what I mean? But I think that's a tendency in acting. I mean, in Shakespeare or whatever. Any of these arts that were they were born not out of restriction. They were born out of creativity and that creative energy. And I personally think it's very sad when people squash that creative energy. I mean, it's heartbreaking in a lot of ways. Thankfully, you were able to move your way out of it, which is part of why I wanted to talk to you so much, was that to see how you manage that. But it's something that we have to be careful about, I think, and because we forget, when we're in that radical creative space, we can sometimes, I guess part of what it is we get used to the way we're doing things, and we tend to resist change, even though we may have started being change makers. We get to a point where sometimes we are resistant as well, and then when we're training the next generation, we sometimes don't allow them the space,
Absolutely. And I notice that a lot. I have a almost 6-year-old daughter,
Right,
and I notice sometimes when she just does something, sometimes my urge is to tell no, it should be done that way. And then I catch myself like, let her do exactly whatever she wants to do. Because I mean, there's nothing she's going to really, there's nothing to mess up. Just, but my first thought, like, I need to tell her like how it should be done. Like, why? That shouldn't be whatever done like that. And I catch myself a lot with that. So it is fascinating what you're saying. I finally like feel it really. I experience it on almost daily basis with my little kid.
Absolutely. I mean, that is true. We do that. It's so hard to not do. And, we all have this thing where like, well, I'm not going to be like my parents, and blah, blah, blah. And then guess what? We become a parent. But the part of it is that awareness and the catching of yourself, because, you want your daughter to have confidence and have some structure. If you have no structure at all, then it's almost as detrimental in a sense, right? There's a balance between that structure and discipline.
Of course, absolutely.
And the freedom. I personally think that when it's done well, the discipline gives you a tremendous amount of freedom, and in other words, artistically, for example, if you're disciplined in your creation, it's just that sometimes that we can kind of go too far, you know what I mean? And part of it may be that we don't trust yet the younger generation to not, mess up everything that we did that was really cool.
Of course, because we're older and wiser and we know better.
Exactly. So it's tricky. Life is very tricky because we grow and we have new generations coming behind us, and then I think when we really fall into a problem is when we think we figured it all out. Like that is usually the biggest thing, is when we stop our own growth, and also don't embrace our current role. I mean, now you're in a mentorship role, not only with your daughter, but you have a lot of followers that look to you and are inspired by you. And it's different from when you were like, 12, right? And in that purely creative state. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit more. Sorry, I got off on this huge tangents are some of my favorite things to get on. So, so I think part of what I when I was reading through your bio and watching, doing my research and whatnot, there are a couple things that stood out to me. One thing is that one of the things that I say, at least in America, because in America it's a little bit different. It was different here. It's still, a bit different. Was that the first teacher is the most important teacher, and because that first teacher tends to either inspire somebody, or sometimes they can make you so mad that you're like, I'm going to do this anyway, that kind of a thing. But usually that first teacher is really, really critical. For you, I would say your first teacher was your grandmother, but I think a lot of your first teacher was yourself. I think you are your first teacher, in your own mind, and then you took guidance because you were so young. That was one thing I want you to sort of comment on this in a second. The second thing that occurred to me, especially when I read about, you were innovative in Patreon. You're one of the first people that used Patreon. You're one of the first people that used Twitch for the concerts. You're one of the first people that did house concerts. All these very innovative things that are now being done, a lot by people. What made me think is that you're a person who's going to find a way to make it work. You're a person that's going to find a way. And that's very, very powerful. And you mentioned about this on one of the podcasts I watched where you said, yeah, I have a goal and I'm going to try all these different ways until I can find my way forward. And I think that's something we all could do more of, is not, because a lot of times we get very discouraged and then we stop looking, we give up. Now, I'm sure you also got discouraged. You must have gotten discouraged at some times, but then you got discouraged, and like in your song, in the Symphony Metal, you got knocked down, but it's how many times you get back up, right? You got back up. You had the strength to get back up and keep finding a way through. So any thoughts on that? Do you feel like, who was your first teacher, and how did it relate to yourself? Maybe it was you that was your first teacher. And how do you think that tenacious ability to kind of look for ways, different, very creative ways to move forward, how has that impacted, your life?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying all these amazing things. But the thing is, I grew up in a culture that was not overall encouraging culture, very different than the United States culture, for example. When a kid does whatever, doesn't matter what, people say, good job, like, keep going.
Right.
When I was growing up, it was almost the opposite. Like, oh, like, that sucks. Don't even like stop. So very, very different culture. And I am still trying to understand why exactly that is. For years, I do not fully understand why that is.
Why that wasn't, you mean in the Soviet culture, why that was?
And even still to some extent now, it's so much better now. And the younger generation is really making a difference. But that old school, it was like this, not perhaps from what I've read about like 100 years ago here, United States. But like people of my generation, most of those people have been like encouraged and kind of nurtured in nicer, more like sweeter ways, even though like I know people like even like don't have much talent, but they have so much confidence. I'm like, damn.
Well, they do. That's a good
Sorry
point.
for the question, but I'm like, oh my God, that's like a little bit overboard. And then like I know so many super talented people who have very little confidence because of their just upbringing, just the way things were. But anyway, but the point is, because there was kind of culture of like kind of I think maybe just subconsciously I felt like I'm the only one who is doing this, and I was doing it. I'm the only one who I can rely on myself. Maybe that's how it felt. Now looking back, I can over explain it or think, but I don't know. That's the way it feels. And when there are not many choices, necessity breeds creativity. True. Like you were saying, like I mentioned, like there was a goal. I try different ways of reaching it, because that I think I found it really, really true in life. When the resources are scarce, you have to work harder at making those resources work.
Right, and because right?
Yeah. So I grew up with very few resources around me, and I find it also true of people of my upbringing and in my country. A lot of people are very resourceful in many ways. Like, okay, how do we make this out of that when we have just literally a that? Like MacGyvering your way through life. Because you don't have the actual tools. You create the tools. You look for the tools when they wouldn't make. Anyway, so I think that is the way my mind works.
Wow. Well, and it is interesting because about this issue of I think part of the reason that people and there are other cultures that will do that too, and a lot of times they're very ancient cultures that will, like very old cultures that will tend to be more critical and very rarely positive. My understanding, and I don't do this myself with people, I tend to be very encouraging, but is that they're trying to strengthen you. You know what I mean? In a way, they're trying to strengthen you. Which in some cases, and in your case, were strengthened by that. It's just that for every strengthened person, there might be 8 or 10 people that are destroyed by that. And I think
they just give up. Yeah.
And they just give up.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's also a lot of like self, personality traits too, right? Like certain personalities will tend to overcome. And some will just, and what it is, I think some people are self-critical too. So if you're self-critical, like severely self-critical, and also outside, it's also very critical, it's very hard to overcome that, and sometimes, and I've definitely known some very fine artists that do kind of give up because they're self-critical, and also there's external critical.
Yeah. I am extremely self-critical as well, and I battle this a lot. Like I actually just have like internal battles constantly with myself, and it's exhausting, but at the same time, maybe because my mom was a psychologist, she helped me understand certain traits of my personality. Just because I feel that way doesn't mean it should be that way. I am kind of in charge of how I feel or how I react to things, but my innate in my nature definitely to be like insanely self-critical. And I've publicly spoken about being struggling with depression. It all kind of goes hand in hand, or makes one worse, so it's not, to this day, an ongoing battle, even though I understand all these things, I've gone through them a million times. It's just the way the body, the nature, the mind, it all works, and it's incredibly frustrating. But you're right about making people stronger. I understand they were trying to, like, you don't want to mollycoddle the heck out of a kid, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want your kid to be like a weakling. You want your kid to be strong, but of course going about it, in ways like never saying a nice word, which is insane. But that was kind of the old school, and like you said, in many cultures, I know, like in England, for example, it's kind of the same way. But in America, it's a bit different, and I love that, and I fell in love with that kind of more nurturing way of existing.
Right. I think, and that's beautifully said. I mean, and I appreciate you sharing this, because I think so many artists can relate. I'll put it this way: I don't know of any artists that don't struggle with these things. Any artists that are truly putting themselves out there, because you're so vulnerable, right? And you're trying to. Also, there's a perfectionism that we battle as well that can destroy us. You have to have some, though. It's an issue of balance in a way. I think what it is with parent and kids, I have a 12-year-old, or he's about to be 12. And, what I feel is that the world will give him negative. The world is going to provide the negative. I'm going to train him to handle that. And I'm going to love him and let him know that no matter what, he is loved by me, and he will never lose that love. And because the world will give you the negative. And so, you see what I mean? I don't have to give him that. And when I speak to him, because I'm his dad, the weight of what I say, the weight of the negative that I say is far more powerful, right? And the weight of the positive that I say. And of course, the negative is more powerful than the positive. But both of those things are far more powerful from the parent. So I think but you could understand, in a very limited resource environment, again, with ancient cultures, cultures that are 2,000, 3,000 years old, there's they're coming from a space of very few, that wisdom that's been handed down for generations is coming from a resource lack environment, right? A lack of resources. So, and probably, 500 years ago, that was really good advice. Don't become a troubadour, or a bard. Learn how to plow, or whatever, or 2 hours. So whatever you do, I don't know, whatever. But the thing is that our kids need to know that we love them and support them, and then, but then let the world come in. So I think what some parents do is they don't allow the world's negative to come in at all, so that the kid doesn't get a chance to practice overcoming that. You know what I mean, as a child. But again, these are, it's just a challenge to always strike those balances. And I know it's interesting that you're going through that now with your daughter, and I'm sure she's going to be amazing. I know she appeared on one of the podcasts I watched on that couch right there. She was like
showing the cameo over there.
Anyway, okay, I want to just briefly touch on a couple of things, and then we're going to get into your current projects. Thank you so much for being willing to talk to me, by the way, about these kind of deep and complex things, because it's vulnerable to share, you know, and I really appreciate that you're open to doing that.
Of course, right back at you.
Well, thank you. So you came to America at age 15. Also, again, you know, you got this scholarship, and you said later you realized there was like 100,000 applicants, which is like, that is mind-boggling. I mean, that's just it. If you had known ahead of time, oh, by the way, there's 100,000 people applying for this, you know, maybe you wouldn't have tried, but you did, and you got it.
It seems impossible, right?
It seems impossible. Are you kidding? That's 1 out of 100,000. I mean, or
it was not one. It was a couple of hundred, but out of
okay, but still.
But I mean, the odds are not in your favor, really.
Right. Exactly. And so you did this, and then you came to America, and it made a huge impression on you. And you didn't speak much English at that time, although the Beatles had been your English teachers and music teachers for a while. In a way, the Beatles were, in a sense. Then you came, and then you went back. I'm kind of skipping through. This is a fascinating time, but I know we're a little bit short on time here. So is there anything that you, I mean, you did make the decision to come back, and back to America and start, you know, going to college here and whatnot. And that's a huge decision, because you missed your family, obviously, when you were here that year. You liked the energy that you were getting, but to make that decision and then actually go through with it, that's a big deal. What was that like to not only go, I want to come back, but then go through the steps to actually make that real?
First of all, thank you for your kind words. It was, now especially looking back, it was the hardest decision of my life.
Yeah.
And I was only 17 when I came back permanently. But the thing is, my drive and the feeling of myself, the way I felt when I came to America, the way I felt, like, where has this been all my life? The culture of self-acceptance. To this day, in Russian and former Soviet Union, I would say whole Eastern European area, very, very self-critical and not self-accepting. Like, oh, I could, like, if I'm a little overweight, I could never wear a mini skirt, for example.
Right.
And there I see, like, you know, for example, I remember as a 15-year-old, I came for like very, very large girls wearing like the shorts. I'm like, how? But they're so confident. I love that. I love that. I mean, maybe awesome. Sometimes overconfident. Again, it's like, you know, there's a limit to confidence. But I was just, that was like, it's a very silly example of.
Actually, like, that's a great example.
It's just, I love that people overall feel comfortable in their own skin in this country, a lot more so than what I've witnessed growing up or what I've felt. Right. And I felt like, where has this been all my life?
Yeah.
It feels right. This feels right to me. How is it possible that I grew up half a world away, but this feels right? And I was just, and I remember just how I felt. And I knew when I went back to Russia after that exchange student year, I just knew I meant to be in America. That is meant to be my home.
Yeah.
And it made things easier because my mom was also leaving to move to Australia because she divorced my dad, which was a while in the making. And I was, so like those things, I thought, okay, even my mom is leaving for a place that feels right to her.
Yeah.
And maybe it's okay for me to leave for a place that feels right for me. But it was extremely hard. I mean, as a matter of fact, I just recently started seeing a therapist to unravel this whole, because it was extremely traumatic. Actually, I thought I came for just a month to come back and like explore the colleges, but then there's political unrest in Russia, and I had friends here in the United States who were just amazing people, and they said, if you go back, you might never come back to the States if like this election happened. Right. So they hired me an immigration attorney, and I stayed here, and I didn't get to see my family for a couple of years after that. So that was like, I left all my stuff there. I just came here for a month. So it was
Wow.
very traumatic in a way it
Mhm.
happened. Now
Mhm.
looking back, I mean,
Mhm.
it, so anyway, that's, that's why I'm
That's
even unraveling this with my therapist,
mhm. Mhm.
because I just thought I was just sad because but in the fashion, I never got to say goodbye. The decision kind of was made for me, the timing of
Mhm.
the decision. So
Right.
anyway, so in all of that, but I'm saying I wanted to, and I still, after all that, I'm really glad I'm here, because in this culture, I really feel this is where my creativity really, really flows.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
it feels right. So
Mhm.
the drive, in spite of all the hardships, the feeling was there, and then the drive and the
Mhm.
desire was
Mhm.
there.
Wow, amazing. Again, thank you for sharing these deep details, because the thing is that, with when we're first of all, you know, people go through difficult situations, and they're all different, right? But I mean, it's like, but this situation you went through when you came here, and again, I'm thinking of the words of your song again about you can't go home. I mean, it's like this, you can't go home again. But part of that is that when there's a tendency that when we leave, we change ourselves, we change, and our home also grows and changes. So when we go back, it's just a surreal experience, because it's not as we remembered it. One, because it's actually changed. Two, because we've also changed and our awareness has changed. But in your case, it literally was totally changing. The whole society was going through a lot of changes.
Crazy
Dramatic,
drastic
great
changes. Yeah,
dramatic
very
changes.
dramatic
And
changes.
your
Yeah.
friends in America were correct. I mean, you may not have been able to come back here, and so kudos to them and for helping you so much in that way. But again, that's got to be wow. It's almost like I have this image of you being in this place, and then the whole universe around you just sort of disintegrating into somewhat of a chaotic state, and then reassembling itself in a new way. You know what I mean? There's a lot of where you have to again rely on yourself and the connections and the friends that you make that were again made by you. So this self-reliance. Anyway, amazing, amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope that you over time, as you heal from this, you can share more of this with us, because I think it obviously comes through your music. We can learn. Your sharing this story can help us out, as we learn how to struggle through things. This is part of why I like to do this podcast and get into these topics, because it's like what we feel very isolated. We feel very isolated when we are going through these things, and that's one of the hardest things. To know that, like one of the things I used to say, when you read somebody's bio, like their, on their CD cover or whatever, and not your bio is actually much better, but if you read the short bio, it all is like, oh, I won this, I did this, I did this, I played this concert, blah blah blah, and then you read their book, their actual biography, and
How did they do it?
by
Yeah.
how they did it and how they struggled, and all the chances that it could have gone a different way for them. And those are so meaningful, because we realize that, oh wait, I am also struggling. They also struggled. I mean, Rachmaninoff is a great example of this, that the depression he went through after his first symphony, and he gave up writing. I mean, he gave up. But we don't put ourselves in his brain at that time, because we're just, oh well, he's amazing, all these amazing things he did. Oh, and he wrote the second concerto right after the depression, blah blah, and we kind of move on. We forget when you were Rachmaninoff at that time, your world was over, right? Your world it was devastating. This brilliant talent, devastated because he didn't think he could write. You know?
I mean,
Yeah,
so we forget this
absolutely.
stuff, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is so true. And I've noticed that as I got older, that sharing, especially on social media, it's
Mhm.
very easy to share just your
True.
best. And it makes others feel just like, what's wrong with me then? Like, all these people are
Well, that's
living this
true. That's
great
true.
life.
Right.
So
Right.
I really try to share. I mean, I don't like go only share bad stuff, but I really try to
Right.
share my struggles as well,
Mhm.
because I think it's so important, because we are united by our vulnerability and our humanity. And as a matter of fact, in our Twitch community, we have automated timed messages in the chat.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when I'm talking during my Twitch concerts, online concerts, we have things going on in the chat. And
Right.
one of the messages is, if you're going through hard times, remember you're not alone.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you were saying, it feels very alone to be when you're in that moment struggling in your pain. Somehow our brain, that's how we're designed, we feel like, oh my God, it's only me. What's wrong with me?
Right.
Even though everybody struggles in different ways for different reasons, but everybody struggles. And just that simple realization that we really are not alone. It feels like it, but we're not.
We're not.
And that's one of the reasons I really try to share more and more of my own personal struggles, because it makes others, feel less horrible.
Alone.
Because for a long time, I felt like I was, the only whatever, and it's an awful feeling.
It is an awful feeling. Well, thank you again for all this, and I would love to. I could talk to you for like a long time, but we got to keep moving, and now we're gonna rush like crazy now to your most recent work and your upcoming album. And I'm gonna let the folks know she's also gonna sing part of a song for us as well, and we're gonna also link, or not only link, but we're actually gonna show her the video for Symphony Metal. The lyric video, which is super amazing. I mean, it's amazing, and it's so powerful, and it's such a great combination of the symphonic writing and the power, the rock and roll power, and you have these legendary musicians joining you on this as well, both of whom are very generous people as well as great artists. It's really, really amazing. So if you can share a little bit about what you have coming up and what you're excited about in the next year.
Oh, cool. By the way, thank you so much for all of your just compliments and kind words. Really appreciate it.
It's hard. It's sincerely meant. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kenneth. So I have a new album. I have 12 albums I've released over the years. This is my 13th one. And this song, Symphony Metal, that I'm wearing this shirt, graphic for which your brother.
Right, Ick my brother.
Ick, shout out to Ick, designed. It's going to be one of the songs on the album, but it's out as a single already. And I do have amazing musicians on the song. We have that's my husband, drummer right there. This is DavidEllefson from Megadeth, an incredible legendary bass player. This is BruceKulick from Kiss, a legendary guitarist. Steve Horner did the symphony. He's an amazing composer. He's a rock star composer. You should look him up on Spotify. He is amazing. So he did the symphonic element of it, and he produced it as well, because I told him the vision of what I want, and he put it all together. So it's an amazing group of people that I'm so lucky to have on my team. And we together recorded the song called Symphony Metal, and the song that you're talking about. It's really about, when you get knocked down, you get up again, because you struggle and it feels like your world is over, and you just don't let it, because the alternative is to literally lay down and die. Right. That's true. And that's a pretty crappy alternative.
That's not a good alternative.
No. So you really don't have a choice, really. Your only choice is just get up and keep going. And sometimes fake it till you make it. Just keep doing the motions, and then you eventually feel that way as well. So there are like multiple facets to the song, but it's mainly an inspiration to myself. Really wrote a song to myself to just live to fight another day. Just no matter how hard it is, just keep doing it.
Amazing. Horner's orchestration is very insistent. Like, it's a very insistent orchestration. It really embodies that da, 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 da. There's like an energy, rhythmic energy, and a climbing, like these climbing figures that go under. Your voice is sort of soaring on top, and then and it's just amazing how well the song, the arrangement fits the song. I mean, I know that's like what they're supposed to do, but it nails it, it really nails it.
Well, thank you. It's a really a group effort, but Steve Horner really put all of our parts together, and it's beautiful. He's a genius for sure.
Well, well, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I'm just saying, like, my whole team here, just very, very lucky. because the song, I'm really proud of the way it turned out. We're actually working on a music video for it. Like, we have a lyric video now, but we're working on a music video as well, which trying to make it epic. Fingers crossed. That's
right. It will. It's going to be epic. I can tell.
And so that's coming out. And then what about any? Are you touring coming up, or are people? And of course, you have your 2-song-a-month club. You have all these cool things. You've got Kote Kitty. You know, you've got Spider-Man. I mean, you know, you're doing movie music. It's kind of, I don't, it's amazing to me that one human being is actually doing all this stuff. But like, what are you like obviously you're excited about this, you know, but anything else that you're excited about?
Yeah, I love performing. So I do these weekly online concerts. They're totally free. People are welcome to come and check me out. All the schedule, it's marinav.com. Under tour. I'm playing in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then next month. And I used to tour a lot, but now I just really do minimal amount of shows because I have a little kid.
Absolutely.
But I'm doing these online concerts. So anybody who's watching this, if they enjoy what I did, check out the streams. They're so wonderful, and it's as much as me performing and singing songs as much as people in the chat talking to us. We constantly interact, and it's so beautiful. We have a great community. So you will definitely not feel alone if you tune into my online concerts at marinav.com. All the information is there.
Yeah, they are wonderful. That's how I first got introduced to you. My brother was saying, "Oh, you have to watch. Marina's got a Twitch concert," and I didn't even know. I didn't know what Twitch was. I'm sorry. I'm a classical musician. I just didn't know. Okay. And then I was like, "This is incredible." And you're so warm and interactive. I mean, you know these fans, like you know these people, and it's a beautiful. It's a beautiful performance, but it's a community. It's a strong community and a community. There's a lot of love, you know, there. A lot of love and positiveness, which we need when we're doing all this struggling, right? We need this community.
We really do. And I'm just so grateful for the community. I did not expect to find a community while doing online concerts. You know, but this has just been amazing. And I'm just so grateful that we have the technology that unites us in such an amazing, beautiful way.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I am just so honored that you would come on the show, and I'm just really, it's just been so great to talk to you, and I could talk to you forever, but sadly we don't have forever. So we're going to close for now, but we will have your song coming up next. What are you gonna be singing?
I'm just going to sing verse and then chorus of Symphony Metal.
Oh, awesome. Fantastic. And then we can put in the lyric video after that. And thank you so much for being here. And for now, this is Kenneth Thompson from Musical Arts Center of San Antonio, wishing you well on your journey. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina.
Time can numb the pain, but you won't be whole again. You'll never be whole again. And no, your dreams erased. You'll never go home again. You'll never be home, never be home again. You think it's over, and did you waste your time on all the things you never tried? And you say, get me out of here until I'm better, slay the dragons, live another day. I am symphony and I am metal. Whatever happens, I will be okay. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why. I've been afraid. I live to fight another day.
whole again. You'll never be whole again. All your dreams erased. You'll never go home again. You'll never be home, never be home again. You think it's over, and did you waste your time on all the things you never tried? And then you say, get me out of here until I'm better. Slay the dragons, live another day. I am symphony and I am metal. Whatever happens, I will be okay. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why I've been afraid. I live to fight another day. Fear can take you down, and you'll never realize. You'll never realize you are here and now. No need to fantasize. Just believe your eyes. You think you're crazy,